Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to episode 13 of That Moment Heart to Heart Talk with Victoria. And today I have Ed Green, who I met through a mutual partnership that we have through Unblinded. And Ed, I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Victoria.
Yeah. And before we begin, and before I have Ed introduce who he is in this world, I just want to introduce the show a little bit. This is a show about amazing people who are doing incredible things in the world, contributing to others, and also their story of some struggles and challenges and how they've thrived. And we all know that sometimes our mess can become our message, and we definitely can thrive through some challenging times. So I'm excited to have Ed here today because he's an incredible human. Ed, welcome again. And please tell us, what is it that you do in the world? Who are you?
Well, who am I? I am a father. I'm a leader. I'm a husband, and I am a project manager in software in terms of my day job. So, that's how I make my money. That's how I earn my living. But really, I'm here to serve. And, the purpose of my life is really to be a leader and to enjoy love in the world and to use my unique gifts to serve the greater good. So in addition to just my day job and the things I do in my family, I am also a person that wants to help people to be fit and healthy and kind of spread that message in the world of using science, using knowledge to improve our health and fitness. So that's a little bit about who I am.
I love that. And you're coming to us from Iowa, right? And you have a home on you have a small farm, or is your home on a small farm? Is that what I read?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes. So we have a small home, or, a home on a ranch. I'll call it a ranch. It's a farm, a ranch, but really it's mainly just a few acres of pasture. And my wife is an animal collector, which means that I am an animal collector. So I support her efforts to save and rescue animals. So we have quite a few animals that she really has saved, and that's really a passion for her. So I support her in that endeavor of cats and dogs and donkeys and horses and various other things that she does in that area. So, but it's really a blast and a blessing to have that resource available to be able to ride horses and to have a time, to space out here in the country where, really not any neighbors close by. Yeah. So it's just wonderful.
I love that. And when we first spoke, what I thought was most fascinating is your history and just, the progression of where you are today. Can you tell us a little bit about your history and what you did in your previous life?
Sure. So, I went to Penn State, and one of the things and I'll get into more detail, but one of the sort of things in my life that shaped me was the fact that we didn't have a lot of money growing up. So I needed to find a way forward. And what I did was I got a scholarship for Naval ROTC initially, and then the Marine Corps. And so I went to 4 years of college at Penn State, and then I got in the Marine Corps, and I flew airplanes for 20 years. So I flew Harrier jump jets, and through that process, not only did I, fly airplanes, I jumped out of airplanes. I've been to Navy scuba school and been in, combat across the world in various, at least in 2 different scenarios. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting and exciting life in that sense. And, that has shaped me in a lot of ways in terms of, my wanting to be a lifelong learner and always striving for the edge and some kind of, development of what can I find that's going to make me better and learn and get that next distinction.
I love that. You talk about distinctions, and I know that this episode's entitled Effective Blaming, and I wonder what is and we're getting into it so quickly, and I definitely want to go back to, what it is that you do to help people with their health, because when you talk about that, you just light up. But one of the things that you do talk about a lot is the personal development that you're very much into, and so am I, and so I really like that. And can you talk a little bit about your story and I feel like you have such a dynamic background, lots of success, you obviously have, a lot of affection and affinity for your wife and for your life. What has had you be challenged in your life that has had you grow?
Well, there were a number of things that had me challenged, and if I'll start sort of at the beginning. So when my father left when I was 5, and that was the 1960s. So I'm 57. So this is like 1968. And at that time, we grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and it was a Catholic sort of community. And so single parents was not a thing back then. It was very much frowned upon, and divorce was not accepted. And so, there was certain stigma associated with that. So that was a challenge that I had to face early on. Being different than other people, and being singled out, and feeling like we were different, and we were, maybe not as good as other people, and we were from the wrong side of the tracks, and we didn't have money. And and then there was also in addition to like that sort of dynamic of just being a single, or my mom being a single parent, she couldn't really make ends meet, so we had to move in with my grandparents, and my grandfather was an alcoholic, and so there was this dysfunction in the family, and there was this really just negative energy around home life and all that. So those are all the challenges, and I say that not because I want anybody to feel sorry for me, but because this really is the thing that shaped my life, which is that these are the challenges that we need to overcome. And just to say a little bit more about that, it does, and I know there's a lot of folks out there, so part of the reason why I want to share this is hopefully someone else can see themselves in this story, and maybe take some nuggets, take some of the distinctions I made to transition and transform out of that situation. And it really does shape a lot of who we are. I realized, and this is many years of self-reflection and study, because I wasn't ever content with where I was. I was always into some sort of self-development way back when, Dennis Waitley and Zig Ziglar, and even when I was 16, 17, 18. I just wasn't content to accept that this was my lot in life, or that kind of thing. And I always had this level of perseverance. And so, but to take a step back and say it does impact a person. It does impact a person's relationship. I was, in a sense, there was a sense of codependency. There was this sense of people pleasing, and there were negative stories around money, and the fact that, since we were from the wrong side of the tracks, there's this idea that, oh, those rich people are somehow different than me, and that that's something not to be aspired to, because you don't want to ever become like that, right? So, so what that did for me was create this backdrop, and through that process, it forced me to make certain changes in my life. And one of the big changes was to take on personal responsibility. Now, I didn't have to do that. I could have just become a victim and, said, woe is me, but it wasn't who I was. I was a person that, I was the oldest in the family, a younger brother. And so for whatever reason, thank God, I'll say, and I stepped up, and I took on that role. I said, I'm responsible, and I'm sort of the father figure in this situation, and I always saw myself in that role. And so and I'll get into a little bit more with a few more distinctions, but where we have these situations where we can have these challenges in our life, we can also use them to step up and to shape us in a positive way, to say, I'm not going to give into this situation. And what can I, and they can, like, I was just fortunate in a lot of ways that shaped me to to persevere, to take responsibility, to almost be ultra responsible in those situations. And you probably see that a lot. So I'll share that with you. And so how does that kind of land, or where do you want to go with that?
Well, I love that. And the idea of self-responsibility, my question is, so many times when we hear self-responsibility, you know, the first thing that comes up may not be, ooh, empowerment, right? It might be something different for a lot of people. It might mean giving up, and I work a lot with people who have experienced many different traumas in their life. And so letting go, like being responsible, means taking 100% responsibility for your life despite the circumstances. And for many people, the idea of holding on to, for lack of a better word, victim, being the victim of those circumstances, creates a lot of their identity. And letting go of that by taking self-responsibility can feel like you're letting go of, something that you've held on to for so long, because it's created who you are, and it's explained why you're justified to feel upset and angry. So, that's just the human experience for a lot of people. And I wonder, did that ever interfere with that path, or did it impact you at all? Or were you always seeing self-responsibility as an empowering context?
No, well, it's a great point, because fortunately, I did feel, there was times when I felt sorry for myself. And I did have that. There was a part of my story that was this victim story that was, woe is me. I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, and, you should treat me better, or I should be more special, or I should get some kind of special, I don't know, consideration or something because of that. But I think where there was still another part of me that was probably more fear of staying stuck in that situation. So it was like one defining decision for me, and even though it probably wasn't really a conscious decision as much as it was an unconscious decision, was my decision to not want to be stuck in that household, right? Because it was so dysfunctional that I made a decision early on that I'm going to get out of this house, right? Like when I'm 17 or 18, as soon as I can, I am going to find a way to move out, right? Yeah. So I would say that's the thing that was more empowering, more of a driving force in my life than the idea that I'm going to get some benefit by being a victim.
Mm-hmm.
So that is probably the single thing, and it changed, so where I was either like when I was 16 and a half, and I was advanced to grade. So that was one thing I think that also helped me, was that I had this level of intelligence, and I feel like I could always figure things out. And so that was another thing I think that empowered me, whereas others may not have that same sort of sense. And so when I was 16 and a half, I started going to Marine Corps recruiter and saying, hey, when I'm 17, when I graduate, because I was going to graduate when I was like 17 and a half, I want to sign up, I want to become a Marine. And that was my way out. That was, my way out of small town USA and this dysfunctional situation that I was in. But fortunately, I had a guidance counselor in school who said, why don't you take this test and see, maybe you can get into college, and maybe you can even get a scholarship. And so he helped me apply for a scholarship in the Navy, eventually I really wanted to be a Marine. And he said, well, the best way to do it is to go get a Navy scholarship, and then you can always switch to being a Marine, in 2 years and that kind of thing. So that's what I did. But I would say the two differences in the two things in my life that made the difference were, one, the sense that I felt like I was always intelligent. And I think that was a part of my identity that was pushed into me.
Mm-hmm.
because like I said, I took a test when I was young, and then I got advanced into an advanced track in school. And then the second part was just this idea that I wasn't going to get stuck here, and I
Yeah.
was going to, get out of this situation.
I love that. A lot of times we think about fear being a motivating factor, in a negative way, in a way that impacts us in a negative way. But in this situation, it was the fear of being stuck that really propelled you forward. I think that's incredible. And then what is this distinction? Can you please tell us, because you were sharing this with me before and I just loved it so much. And this obviously comes from, a lot of your work just with personal development, but effective blaming and how that impacted you.
Sure. So, well, let's start with this process of, really effective blaming comes from Tony Robbins, and I've taken a lot of Tony's seminars, and one of the biggest ones being Date with Destiny, and I've been through that seminar twice, which is an amazing seminar if you ever want, an amazing course, an amazing event for anyone to go through. It is a number of days, and it does cost, a bit of money, but it's certainly worth it to make that transformation. And through that process, one of the first things that I realized was the need for forgiveness. And so the realizing that, like he talks about, people are doing the best that they can with the resources that they have available. And so, think back to the 1960s and the way things were, and the culture that we were in, and the way that the people, that were in my life, how they were formed and what their values were. And even just the weaknesses that my dad had because he left or whatever. And then coming to the conclusion that these folks had done the best they could with the resources that they had available. Mm-hmm. And then coming to the realization also that truly forgiving is realizing there's no need for payback. And there's no need for an apology from anyone. So there was nothing I had to go seek out. That this forgiveness was really within myself. And the benefit was not for them. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me because I deserved it. I deserved not to have this burden of, blaming them or holding this grudge, right? Mm-hmm. And so, through this process, and I wouldn't say it's easy. I wouldn't say it's necessarily an easy process. Although for some, maybe it is just that simple to just hear this and say, I'm going to just, I see the point, and I just see that I'm the one who's suffering because of holding this grudge, right? And the other component of the forgiveness was, not only the benefit, but the completeness of it. So yeah. I want to forgive all of those who are involved in the situation, because there were points in time where I forgave some people, and you think that that's enough, but really then you get to the point where you can actually forgive all the people who are involved in the situation, and regardless of their role in it, and then realizing that the last step in the process is to forgive yourself. And that's probably one of the hardest things to do, is to just forgive yourself for any of these mistakes that I had made in the past, or any of this negative energy that I carried, that I can just forgive myself and move on. And so from that, then the next step is you can get into this. You can, when I got to the level of forgiveness, Tony also talks about effective blaming. And so while I was blaming people for not giving me the best start, or not giving me a great childhood, or not maybe giving me the resources that I could have had, or that other people had by comparing me to other people, then I realized that really I need to blame them for the good things that they gave me, the self-reliance, the deep responsibility that I gained, becoming a caring person, being able to empathize with other people in those situations, and also being driven, and just being, wanting to get out of that situation so bad that I was going to persevere, and then realizing that if I set my mind to something, that I could achieve these things, and
Mhm.
that carried me through the rest of life. So that's kind of the thread of, this anger, this sense of loss, but then realizing forgiveness for others, forgiveness for self, and then effectively like blaming and really crediting them for the challenges that shaped me to be the person that I am.
As you're talking, I often, when people speak and I relate, you get chills. I got these chills around forgiveness. Forgiveness. It's such a, I've always experienced that. I don't know if you have too, Ed, just as a back and forth process. It's like, you get it. And then, these older feelings come back, and then you're dealing and grappling with that. And it's like 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. And then maybe what you're talking about is you reached this. I guess I'm curious, can you share at what point was there a reach of, what you would say completeness and forgiveness, as opposed to the back and forth process? Like, what was that point in time? Was it just, I'm done with this, or was there an aha moment?
I will say there was, and I so relate to this back and forth process because I think you've hit on something that is, it's like a level of release that, and we may even cycle. Like at some point you may feel like, hey, I've forgiven, and then you sort of relapse, and that, or I did. I will say, like at Date with Destiny, we did a process where I don't even know what the process really was. I can't really describe it, but it was sort of this process of, what Tony talks about is getting into that and thinking about, like, those points in time that we really are holding this grudge, or what's holding us back, or what are those things that
Oh,
you
did
know
I lose you?
he,
Oh, there you
he's
are.
oh yeah, sorry, the phone call came in, I apologize.
That's
um,
okay.
uh, so yeah, but Tony talks about, and I don't even know, like I said, the process, but it was in Date with Destiny, and then you just go through. It was this song, and it was playing, and I was just like, just release me, and then I just felt this release, like I don't have to hold this anymore. I don't have to carry this burden anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it was through that process.
And as you describe it, it sounds so simple. And somebody might be saying, you listen to a song and you release, but that's how, I was just talking to my partner last night about how I was saying to him, I've heard this concept of, what was it? Heard this concept of relationship with yourself is the most important my whole life, right?
Mm.
Personal development my whole life. I'm a therapist, so I preach it, right? But there was something that happened from the time I did Date with Destiny, most recently to now, where it like clicked. Something just clicked. And I think people go through this, just something happens and it just makes sense, it just like all comes together. So that sounds like a phenomenal moment for you. Um, and, the other thing that you were talking about, which I think is fantastic, is the forgiveness of self. So many people might say, forgive myself for what? I didn't do anything. But we don't recognize that so much of the time we're actually angry with ourselves or,
Mm-hmm.
we're holding on, and, it's ourselves to forgive for holding on, right? Or whatever it is that you're doing. So what would you say to people who are just in the process of this in the beginning? They're just, they're not really in maybe the personal development world. Like, where should they begin?
Well, I would say that, first of all, be easy on yourself, and yeah, just be kind to yourself. That's really a
Mm,
big part of it, because I think at least I felt like, well, why isn't this maybe happening faster? Or, why am I holding on to this? Or how come I can't make the transformation? And I would just say, things will come in time, and it is a process. Certainly, I would look to, resources. Certainly, other people can help, like by sharing your journey and sharing, becoming more open, because a big part of, like, Brene Brown talks about this, and that's another resource that I use, the shame, right? And shame grows in the dark when
Yeah.
we're too ashamed to even talk about, these things that happen to us. And if we can find trusted people who have earned the right to hear our story, is the way Brene puts it, and share our story with them, I think there is great healing in that process.
Mm.
And not necessarily I don't think it does good just to share our victim story, but to
Hmm.
start to share our empowering story,
Hmm.
and like to rewrite that story, I guess, really, in the sense that these things happen to me and I'm not going to let them define me. It doesn't have to be this way for the future. Even
Hmm.
though this thing happened to me in the past and I have this story, I can change the ending.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to share, like to share these things that sort of shaped us, and then have people challenge us and challenge ourselves to write a different ending,
Hmm.
to write a different ending to that story.
I love that. I love that so much. Who have been the trusted people in your life who have earned the privilege to hear yours?
Interestingly enough, I would say a lot of people in the Tony world who, like other coaches, other almost like sort of strangers that I met in that process, who were strangers before, but who were on a similar path, and who I met at events or through self-development
Hmm.
groups. Just other people who had the same journey, and who also shared with me the things and challenges that happened in their life.
I love that.
Just trusted like accountability partners.
Yeah, we talk a lot about how accountability is super important, and I certainly have my fair share of accountability partners as well. So, Ed, one of the things that you shared with me that I think is great, and I guess this is, and I'm kind of curious how you got into it, but you really have a passion for helping people with their health. And can you share a little bit about how you got into that and what it is that you're doing now to contribute in that way?
Yeah, for sure. So when I turned 50 years old, I was like 25, 30 pounds heavier than I am now. And I was on cholesterol meds because, I was overweight. My diet was really, the standard American diet. I had kind of fallen for that thought process, 3 square meals a day, whatever, because that was how I grew up. And that kind of served me, till I was 50 years old, just because I had been healthy enough and worked out enough, and it didn't really impact me. But then as we get older, things start to change, metabolism slows down, and things like that. So, I was in this spot where I really didn't want to be. And like I said, I was on cholesterol meds, and I can imagine myself not doing well in the future, and
Mm.
only getting worse, because things weren't getting better. It wasn't like I was getting any younger. It wasn't like I was working out anymore. And because of, even trying to work out, I had always been a person that was fit and worked out, but it became harder because, just because of all the inflammation in my body, that my joints would hurt. So that I would be taking Motrin. And this is really where I started my Tony journey. It was in 2013. And I went to a UPW Unleash the Power Within seminar in Chicago. And through that process, he does what he calls the Dickens process. And we imagine ourselves, 5 years from now, and how we're going to be if we don't change the things in our life. And like, the Ghost of Christmas Past and the Ghost of Christmas Present, that whole story about how am I going to be, and I can write a different outcome for my future. And so as we like future pace and project into the future and say 5 years and 10 years and 20 years, and how am I going to be? it I realized that, I was not going in a good direction, and it
Hmm.
wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I made a decision, and Tony offers this 10-day challenge for fitness and health. And basically, a 10-day challenge is to become a vegan for 10 days and really just eat clean, raw fruits and vegetables, and, also work out, drink lots of water, and breathing, meditation. And so I took the 10-day challenge, and it was such a transformation in my life that I, went 11 days and then 20 days and then 30 days. And I literally went 365 days that
Wow.
year with a vegan diet, really, I mean, strict. It got like over time, I started to incorporate other things back into my diet. And, every once in a while I'd have, whatever, fish and then meat here and there. But really, for the most part, like that was the transforming moment in my life. And from that, I got back. I had always been a person that was, like I said, I wanted these great distinctions and, how can I get the edge? And I'd read all these other books, earlier in my life around how to have a better diet. And so I started really getting into like the vegan diet, and then what are the best things in, plant-based lifestyle.
Hmm.
And there's a website called Forks Over Knives, and, and then reading about the science behind it, where people have made this transformation from having heart disease or having diabetes or being pre-diabetic, and being able to just make a change in their diet and get off meds. And that's
Yeah.
what I was able to do. I was able to get off cholesterol meds just through diet and exercise. And
Okay.
that's the story that I want to share with other people. I've made a lot more distinctions about superfoods, supplementation, and all science-based, all natural, all based on pure food, not any kind of, quick fix, not, the fad or the diet or some kind of, weight loss regime, but something that's sustainable long-term, because, that's what I tell people is you need to be able to have something that you can sustain long-term. So, that's what I really love to do, is to help people and help them to make that transformation themselves in a healthy and positive way into something that's sustainable.
I love that. And so when you work with people to support them, is there a program that you use, or is it a product that you think is something that they should have, or how do you work with people?
So I do have, there are superfood products which I do represent. I have from Purim, because it's pure and premium is what it is, and it's all based on food, basically freeze
Mhm.
dried, organic, non-GMO. They're all kind of vegan sources. There's also healthy supplementation. One of the big things I talk about with people, and so many people have this problem nowadays, which is with the microbiome.
Yep.
And there's a product called Biomedic, which is has certifications, which I can share with people if they're interested. But it's been studied. It has some clinical studies, and it's proven it's got prebiotics which support the healthy growth of bacteria colonies, and probiotics. Prebiotics are kind of the fiber, healthy fiber that is food for your digestive system, your healthy biome. And then the probiotics, which kind of recharge the healthy bacteria. And then there's also compounds that are proven naturally to take toxicity out of your body.
Wow.
So fulvic and humic acid, which is proven to, or at least studies show that it reduces the levels of toxins in your body. So one of the big things is these days is the glyphosate, which is in the environment from pesticides, and it's also used on a lot of foods, believe it or not.
Wow.
And that's, a lot of people have absorbed glyphosate in their bodies, and this helps to what they call chelate, or to remove those things from your body. So those are some of the specific products that I market myself, because I use them and I found them to be super healthy. I rarely get even so much as a cold, and just from healthy eating,
Yeah.
superfoods, and taking care of my biome. So yeah, that's a big part of it. I also share with people a process that they can go through of, figuring out where you are, measuring kind of, what your weight is, going to the doctor, getting a blood profile, things like that. So you can kind of really figure out where you are, understanding, what your level of exercise can be. Because I think it's important to set that baseline and not just rush into things. And then detoxification is one of the big first steps that I teach people. They need to detoxify their body, and that really resets your body. And then you can start, fresh with, and that's what I did through the 10-day challenge, detoxify my body. And then mindset, the third component is mindset.
So that's what I wanted to.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ed. I think there was a lag, and I'm interjecting, but that's what I wanted to also, say is that not only, you're very smart and you obviously know what you're talking about. So it's like, I trust you automatically. And there's something about your, there are coaches out there, but there's something about, and I call this, and this comes from the post-traumatic growth world, which is really what I'm married to in terms of, this experience of post-traumatic growth, which is expert companions, people who have been through it, and they become these expert companions with people on their journey. And I know so many of my clients and so many people in my life, myself included, who have these very, I would say, interesting, for lack of a better term, relationships with food and relationships with how we, what we ingest and how we consume and what we consume. And so I would think, and I know that mindset and coaching around that is extremely important in what you do. It's probably the most important piece. And what would you say is your favorite part about coaching someone on mindset around this?
My favorite part is seeing the transformation. Is that point in time when they realize that they can take charge of their life, and they actually embody those rituals to where they come back to me and say, I'm now working out every day, and I like it and I enjoy it. That's my favorite part.
I love it. And I would imagine, like, you, because of your own journey, you see the possibility, even though people can't see it yet for themselves. And so, really guiding them. Hey, so I have a question for you, kind of a fun question, Ed. So what's your power move?
My power move? Yes.
I love that. Mine is yes. If I do it loud enough, our dog is going to wake up. I'm not going to. Amazing. Yeah. And so that's actually one last question. Do you work with people around their mindset, but also the physicality, just, those components of a power move or doing something with their body to really, indent in there this empowerment?
I'll tell you, the main thing that I teach people is to make a commitment to rituals. And so I will say this is kind of the key distinction. If you want to make a change, then you set a goal to do it every day. And so for me, it was, I'm going to work out every day. And when I say that, it doesn't have to be an hour of, an hour in the gym. And in fact, I wouldn't want it to be an hour in the gym, but I would say 5 minutes. Like, I would start and just say, or even 2 minutes, but I want you to establish that ritual that I get up and I work out every day. And so, and they talk about this in various books. There's a number of books, Tiny Habits and some of these other books that have come out recently. And once you say, I'm going to work out 2 minutes every day, and you do it, and some people it's 30 days, some people it's 60 days, some people it's 90 days. Being consistent with that for that period of time, suddenly your mind is and as you know, we have this wiring that wants to stick to the familiar, and so it takes some conscious effort. It does. You can't really get past that, but it takes conscious effort to get past what's familiar. So we need to make what wasn't familiar before familiar, and the way to do that is by doing it every day And by not giving yourself an excuse that, hey, I don't have a half hour, I don't have this, I don't have that. But I get up and I work out for 2 minutes. I get up and I work out for 5 minutes. Sometimes it's a half hour, sometimes it's 45 minutes, but it's at least, let's just say, 2 minutes a day. And after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, it's now a habit.
Yeah.
And so I get up and I don't ask myself, am I going to work out today? Is this the day I work out? I get up and I say, what am I going to do for my 2-minute workout this morning? That's a different question. Once we're asking ourselves that question, exactly, what am I going to do for my 2-minute workout today? That's a different question. Now it becomes habit. It becomes, we have made the transformation into something that's gonna be sustainable.
Incredible. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation. I just got so much value, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Thank you, Victoria, wonderful. Thank you. I can't thank you enough for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Before we end, I just want to let everyone know how to reach you. The best way you said was on LinkedIn or Facebook, Edward Greene on LinkedIn. And what's one thing, just before we end, that you would like to leave people with? It could be a quote that you love, or something that you think they should read, or just a takeaway.
My biggest takeaway is be kinder to yourself. Be kinder to yourself.
I love that. I love that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. That's amazing. Beautiful. Yeah. Well, Ed, this will not be the last time we talk. And I appreciate so much you sharing yourself here. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Victoria.